I, 40F, have had a prosperous career as a research professor at a prominent institution, but I have always been the disappointing daughter in my family. I had to tell my tale now, after decades of silence. Since we were small, my younger sister Rose, 38F, has been the golden child, and their obvious partiality has finally reached a breaking point, shattering our entire family dynamic. The faint sting of comparison permeates my earliest recollections. When I was 8 years old, I recall sitting in my room excitedly reading my scientific books, as my mother's voice could be heard downstairs. "Why can't you be more gregarious like your sister?" At the age of 6, Rose had already captured our parents' attention by entertaining their acquaintances in the living room with her theatrical acts. I spent hours disassembling and reassembling old clocks, interested in the mechanics of how things worked, while Rose performed and received all the attention. It was an early pattern. I requested a chemistry set for my 10th birthday, but instead, I received some used novels because books are more practical. 2 months later, Rose expressed interest in taking dance lessons, and our parents unexpectedly found money for private instruction, complete with new ballet shoes and specially designed tutus. That same year, when I sought to join the school science club, Mom groaned about the cost and advised me to concentrate on making friends instead. In those early years, my lone family ally was my grandma, Mary. Her home, which was only a few blocks away, turned into my haven. I would spend weekends with Grandma Mary while my parents took Rose to acting classes and dance performances. Before she retired, she taught science in high school, and she fostered my curiosity in a manner my parents did not. "Your mind is a gift," she would say as she taught me about the constellations from her backyard or assisted me in conducting simple experiments in her kitchen. When we were teenagers, the difference in how we were treated became glaringly apparent. My renewable energy project won the state science fair when I was 14 years old. My parents said they had to take Rose to a crucial audition, so they didn't even attend the ceremony. Meanwhile, Rose's small role in a local theatrical performance prompted a lavish celebration that year, complete with the entire extended family and even a professional photographer. High school was a haze of scholastic success that was not acknowledged at home. In addition to maintaining a 4.0 GPA, I served as president of the science club and editor of the school newspaper. Rose, however, was starring in school plays and dating the football captain. Her social life and theater endeavors were the topic of every dinner conversation. If my academic achievements were recognized at all, they were just given a cursory nod. I had obtained a full scholarship to study biochemistry at a prominent university by the time my college acceptance letters arrived. When Rose decided she wanted to attend a pricey private institution for performing arts, our parents sold our vacation cabin to pay for her education. My mother's response, rather than one of pride, was, "At least we won't have to worry about your tuition." They remarked, "Rose shows such promise. We can't let her talent go to waste." I threw myself into my studies during my undergraduate years, finding comfort in the lab where my intelligence and dedication were finally acknowledged. My professors supported my academic endeavors and encouraged my research, becoming the mentors I had always desired. I received full funding for a prestigious PhD program after graduating with honors. When Rose landed a callback for a commercial audition, my parents left early from my graduation ceremony to accompany her. In my 20s and 30s, I steadily built my career. I secured substantial research grants, published widely, and at 40 I was granted tenure, an uncommon accomplishment in academia. Yet during family gatherings, the conversation always turned to Rose's latest acting project or her marriage to David, a prosperous real estate developer. My molecular biology research achievements were summed up as, "Oh, Emma's still doing her science things." When I met David, a researcher in my department, I felt like I had finally found happiness. He seemed to share my enthusiasm for scientific advancement and to understand me. Our partnership developed naturally due to our shared interests, and we collaborated on multiple papers. When he proposed last year, I believed I had finally reached a milestone my family would acknowledge and celebrate. However, everything fell apart in the most catastrophic way last week. To finish some data for our latest paper, I stayed late at the lab. When I went to David's office to deliver the results, I discovered David and Rose sharing a passionate moment on his desk. My fiancé and my married sister were having an affair. Even worse than the betrayal was what happened afterward. When I told my parents, they were immediately worried about Rose. My mother begged, "Please don't tell David. Think about your sister's marriage. He has a prenup. She'll lose everything if this gets out." My father agreed, adding, "These things happen, Emma. You need to be the bigger person here." I had been the bigger person for 40 years. When they missed my birthdays to throw lavish celebrations for Rose, I remained silent. When they flew across the country for Rose's community theater performances but missed my PhD defense, I stayed silent. When they helped Rose purchase her first home while lecturing me about financial independence, I swallowed my hurt. Amidst the turmoil, something unexpected happened. I met Jack at a university fundraising event 3 weeks ago. He was there to present ideas for a new science facility. Jack, a 44-year-old architect specializing in research spaces, showed genuine interest in my work. Unlike David, who often turned discussions into competitions, Jack listened with true attention, asked insightful questions, and shared his creative approach to designing spaces that support scientific discovery. When I called Grandma Mary last week to tell her about Jack, she immediately noticed the change in my voice. "You sound lighter, dear. Tell me about this architect of yours," she said. We spent 2 hours discussing everything, from Jack's passion for blending art and science in his designs to how he remembered every detail about my work after our first coffee meeting. With Jack, I felt seen and valued in a way I had never experienced before. The contrast between how my family treated David and how they responded to Jack was stark. At family gatherings, my parents would quickly shift conversations about David to Rose's accomplishments. Even when I mentioned Jack to them recently, their interest was fleeting, and they found a way to steer the conversation back to Rose. The irony of my situation wasn't lost on me. Despite decades of professional success and recognition in my field, my family's focus always remained on Rose. My mother's reaction to my recent Morrison grant, a coveted award in molecular biology, was a dismissive, "That's nice, dear, but did you hear about Rose's latest role? She has 3 whole lines in a national ad." They threw a family dinner to celebrate Rose's commercial, but my grant wasn't mentioned. The day I caught Rose and David together, I had gone to his office to show him the grant acceptance letter, hoping he would be proud. Instead, I found him with my sister, her designer dress askew, and my engagement ring glinting mockingly on my finger. What followed was a blur of excuses from David. "I felt neglected because you're always in the lab." Rose's casual dismissal. "Oh, Emma," and my parents' anxious pleas to protect Rose's marriage. None of them asked about my feelings. The next day, I buried myself in my work at the lab, seeking solace in the precision and predictability of science. It was the one place where my worth wasn't measured by Rose's shadow. My graduate students updated me on their latest findings, and for a few hours I felt like myself again. But something had shifted within me. For the first time, I wasn't just hurt. I was furious. The silent resentment I had harbored for years boiled over into a powerful, freeing anger. As I glanced at the grant letter on my desk, the published papers lining my shelves, and the students eager for my guidance, I realized something monumental. I no longer needed my family's approval. That evening, I had dinner with Jack. Though we'd only recently begun spending time together, his steady presence and genuine interest in my work made me feel safe enough to share my story. When I finished, Jack sat quietly, his thoughtful architect's gaze fixed on me. "In architecture," he said, "sometimes we encounter buildings that look perfect from the outside but have fundamental structural issues. No amount of cosmetic repair can fix them. The best thing we can do is acknowledge they're unsafe and rebuild from the ground up." His words hit me harder than I expected. Jack's insight resonated deeply. I had spent my entire life trying to repair a fundamentally flawed family dynamic. I tried being the ideal daughter, the understanding sister, the accomplished academic who minimized her own success to avoid overshadowing Rose. But the structure was beyond saving. It was time to let it go. That realization gave me a strange sense of peace. Over the following days, I began to set boundaries I'd never dared to enforce before. I stopped answering my parents' calls when I saw Rose's name flashing on the caller ID, and I let her voicemails go unanswered. Her latest message, full of excuses and demands for forgiveness, ended with a line about how families should forgive each other. I deleted it without hesitation. When I shared my decision with Grandma Mary during our weekly dinner, she nodded approvingly. "Your parents have spent so much time making Rose the star of their story that they forgot there are other stories worth telling," she said, swirling her tea. "But you, my dear, have been writing your own story all along. Maybe it's time to stop letting them edit it." Her words were a revelation. For the first time in my life, I understood that I didn't need their validation. My accomplishments were enough. My life was enough. Jack and I continued our plans for a wedding that reflected who we were, not who others wanted us to be. The ceremony would take place in a botanical garden, attended by a small group of close friends, supportive relatives like Grandma Mary and Aunt Linda, and Jack's loving family. Rose and my parents were not invited, a choice that felt both revolutionary and freeing. Predictably, the decision caused an uproar. My mother called in tears, accusing me of destroying the family. "You can't exclude your own sister," she wailed. "What will people think?" My father tried a more measured approach, saying, "Emma, this isn't like you. You're the reasonable one. Don't let resentment cloud your judgment." But I stood firm. "The rift you're talking about was created long before this wedding. This is my day, and I won't let anyone ruin it. Not Rose and not you." The day of the wedding arrived with clear skies and a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. Jack and I exchanged our vows beneath a canopy of blooming flowers, surrounded by people who genuinely cared for us. Grandma Mary gave a heartfelt toast, reminding everyone that family is defined not by blood, but by the love and respect we share. But, as expected, Rose and my parents tried to disrupt the day. Rose showed up uninvited, dressed in white, accompanied by my mother who sobbed theatrically at the garden entrance. My father attempted to reason with the security guards, insisting that family should be allowed in. I stepped out, still in my wedding dress, and confronted them. For the first time, I refused to stay silent. "Rose, you're not welcome here," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "You betrayed me in the worst way possible, and I will not let you steal this moment." "But Emma, we're sisters," Rose cried. "Family forgives." "No," I replied, "family doesn't betray each other. You made your choices, and now you have to live with the consequences." As I spoke, David, Rose's husband, arrived unexpectedly. Seeing Rose in a wedding dress and hearing her stammer excuses about why she was there made him demand the truth. Rose faltered, and then, like clockwork, her phone rang. It was David, my ex-fiancé. On speakerphone, he asked if she'd still be coming over later. The air became electric. David's face darkened with realization, and without another word, he walked away. Rose ran after him, shouting his name, while my parents tried to blame me for the scene. "This is not my fault," I told them, keeping my composure. "It's hers, and yours, for enabling her." With Rose and my parents gone, the remaining guests rallied around Jack and me. His mother, ever pragmatic, clapped her hands and declared, "Shall we have a wedding?" And so we did. The ceremony was everything I had hoped for. Intimate, joyous, and entirely ours. Jack's vows moved me to tears, and for the first time in years, I felt truly seen and valued. Jack and I are now enjoying our honeymoon, a perfect blend of relaxation and exploration. Rose's marriage to David has dissolved, and she's been left with nothing due to their prenuptial agreement. My parents have tried to contact me, no doubt to ask me to help her, but I've let their calls go unanswered. I'm finally free of the family dynamics that once weighed me down. Surrounded by love, respect, and a newfound confidence in my worth, I'm beginning this next chapter of my life with gratitude and peace. Cheers to fresh starts and the freedom to live authentically.